Thanks everyone for waiting. We have Dan here, who is a senior counselor at St. Luke's ElderCare, and he will be sharing with us on technical loneliness and social isolation in our aging population. So very excited to hear from Dan how we can help our seniors. Dan, the floor is yours. Feel free to share your screen and you can start the presentation.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me here, to share about today's topic. Before I start, maybe allow me to do a quick introduction about myself. My name is Dan. Currently, I'm with St. Luke ElderCare. I'm with the Care and Counselling Department. So in St. Luke ElderCare, we have a total of 23 eldercare centers, 1 nursing home, and 1 active aging hub. Currently, I'm also the deputy head of the department, and as my role as the counselor, I work closely with the elderly that are attending our daycare and coming to for our rehab session. So I work closely with the caregiver also to help them to identify some of the resources that within the community, and also to address some of the possible challenges that caregiver might be going through. For example, caregiver being out while they are performing their caregiving roles. So for elders whom I'm working with, a lot of time I would say that when they come to our daycare, there will be a transition for them, because prior to that, usually they are quite healthy. And for them, I would say that, unfortunately, there is usually an episode of hospitalized admissions. It can be a stroke that they have suffered, or a fall, and henceforth cause a decline in terms of their physical functioning and also their mobility. And I would say that, majority of them that come to our daycare sometimes is they are being referred from the hospital. And that is the part where I would say they might not be motivated to come to our daycare because their family members want them to come. And family members are also concerned about them also if, let's say, they continue to stay at home, and there might be a possibility that because of the decline in terms of their physical functioning and mobility, if there's no one at home, they might suffer a fall again. So that's a part that usually family members will encourage them to come to our daycare. Yeah. And of course, as part of the challenges, that elderly are going through, besides as what today later part I'm going to cover on the loneliness part and the social isolations, there will be a lot more that, sometimes elderly clients will be going through, because it's part of the life journey that every one of us will be going through. Aging process is, if we really look at it, it's the last stage of our human development. And it's really something that, we can't avoid, of getting old. And that is also the part that a lot of time I would say that, the situation that we are facing is that, as we work so hard for many years, be it when we are the day that we are born, till the day we retire, a lot of time, especially when we retire, we want to have that quality of life. But however, as part of, certain situation might happen, whether is it our health or because of certain unfortunate, event that happen that, having a fall. So that might affect what we hope to have, that kind of quality of life. So it's really not easy, talking about, elderly going through this stage of life, because, as we look at ourselves, this is something that end of the day, or, end of the life stages, it will be something that we will be going through. Yeah. So maybe I can share my slide so that I prepare some slide for everyone here. Okay, this is today's topic that I will be covering, in a way, talking about, not just loneliness, social isolations, but also how can we manage it? How can we deal with it? I believe the housekeeping rule has been shared by the speaker early on, so I will not touch on this part. This is somewhat administrative, which I also believe that, it has been covered. So this is me. My name is Dan again. Yep. So let me jump right into this slide. Aging in Singapore and Asia, I guess it's nothing new, especially if you have come across that, aging is something that not just in Singapore, but in many countries, be it developed or, developing country, they are facing through, the fast growth in the population, especially on the aging. And this is something that, I would say that it will cause a lot of problem, And as you look at the part that is definitely a global issues, and it will have an impact on financial part, because as you are aware, due to a low fertility rate, family, the children that they are having are getting, the number are getting reducing, instead of, in the past, like the older generation, they will have many children. But if we look at the current trends, family planning and, is really getting smaller in that sense. And it's really something that we can't, I would say, is really something that we really don't have much choices because of the cost of living. And as a parent, I believe a lot of parents out there want their children to have a good future, have a good job. And between the family, if you have the resources, definitely you want to provide whatever you can for your children. And of course, for your children, if you have many children and you have limited resources, that is the part that, there will be very, I would say, smaller portions of resources that are able to invest on the educations for the children. And henceforth, if you look at majority of the development countries, families are getting smaller in the way, people are getting later in terms of their marriages because the priority are also different. People tends to focus more in terms of their career. And due to all these issues, the population itself, especially for the younger generations, is getting smaller and smaller. But on the other hand, the Asian populations is increasing. And if you can look at this slide, it's an overview, it's an overview in the Asia Pacific, the Hong Kong, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, China, and other countries. If you look at it, it seems like there is a trend, especially for developed country, the change of the working population due to the low fertility rate, which I have shared early on. And this is something that, because of the high living cost also, people are more mindful in terms of, I wouldn't say whether to set a family or having more children. But this is the issues that I believe we are facing in many countries. And this is something that, to relate back to today's topic on the loneliness and social isolation, it has been definitely increasing and a public health concerns in our aging society. And if you look at these studies, there will be an increase, of 50% over the age of 60, and a higher risk of social isolations. And this is something that I would say is we can't really avoid this situation or run away from this. And this is also something that I thought to share with everyone, that different individuals will have variety of reason. When we're getting old, like what earlier I think I have covered also, as we age, as we come to a last stage of our human development stages, we will definitely, our health will be not as strong, comparing to the past. The way we do things, I wouldn't say we will be doing things slower, but it's like the fitness level, there will be definitely a decline. And of course, if we look at the stamina that we used to have 5 years or 10 years ago, definitely there will be a change in all these areas. And as part of, if we're looking at the aging part, why there will be social isolations, why there will be a loneliness. And sometimes it's really to link to the part that, especially the retirement age, in Singapore, it had, come to 62. Our government is looking at it to how to continue to engage this elderly population to further support, the workforce in the country. And of course, if really talk about the retirement age, people are not given a choice to retire and unable to work, there will be a situation that there will be a loss of the social identity. And it will be really tough for the individual, because it's like, every day the person, waking up in the morning, preparing and getting ready to work as part of the routine, but as time goes by, when come to the stage that they really need to leave a job, it will be really a situation that they will lose the momentum of the daily routine. And it's really something that we might not be able to visualize at this moment, especially for us who are still working. We might not be able to visualize on this part. And it's really come to the stage that, when it comes to retirement age, that we are really leaving our workforce. It's not that we are taking a leave or, taking a break from our work, but it's really come to that stage that we might not be able to come back to the workforce to continue to perform the similar role that what we used to do. And that is the part that, is the issue that later part, I would say, an elderly might be going through. Because the identity will not be there anymore for the elders. And this can be quite challenging for one, because it's not just losing the social identity, but of course the social connection, because there won't be any interaction with our colleagues, and also there won't be any discussion on the project or any the expectation that we need to deliver as part of our role. Henceforth, there's a part that I'm trying to share with everyone down here, that eventually there will be a stage where we'll leave the workforce, and the role that we'll be in, we will not be performing the role anymore. And it depends on really on individuals, depending on individual, how one person able to overcome it. And initially during this can be, I would say, this can be a transition period for a person who are retiring. and to retire and, you know, waking up in the morning, not able or no need to wake up so early, it might be a relief for one also. But it's like, you know, can you imagine that, like what I share is no longer a holiday that you are taking. And this can be a long-term kind of holiday that you will be no longer required to go back. And as part of the aging, you know, as we grow older, we might start to realize that our friends that we have, you know, we might be no longer around. They might not be around anymore. And sometimes this is a reality that, you know, we might be facing. And it's really something that we can't, I would say, it's not that we can't do anything, but it's really fall back, how can we open up in terms of acceptance in the situation that we're in, and how can we readjust in our situations also as we continue to age? How can we let go of something that we have been doing for many years, the role that we have been functioning for many years, you know, taking the lead in our company? How can we learn to let go and to readjust back to the part where, you know, in our new landscape, or I should say that, you know, the new areas, that how can we work towards that? And this is something that I believe is important to share with everyone, that, you know, social isolation, there will be eventually leads to a lot of problem. I mean, it's really something that, you know, we are unable to run away from it. And that is something that we need to ask ourselves, how can we still stay social intact as we age? Because if we are not being connected socially, there might be other issues that we are facing. As you look at this, you know, this PowerPoint slide itself, whether is it premature death or an increased risk of dementia. Of course, don't talk about other, you know, medical conditions, you know, whether is it heart disease or the risk of the stroke. And of course, loneliness is something where it can lead to other mental conditions such as depression, anxiety, and also suicidal ideations. And this is something that we will need to be mindful with, you know, and to learn to understand, you know, whether it's a form of knowledge that we have read somewhere, but how can we continue within the family? This is something that I always share with people, especially when it comes to aging, when it comes to loneliness, and, you know, the social isolation part. It's something that I always share, that don't wait until the time when it happens. We can start within our family to continue to provide that kind of support, you know, to our aging parents, to continue to connect with them. Yes, eventually there will be a deterioration of their health, you know, but within the family, how can we continue to stay connected? And I would say that as part of my work, you know, working with elderly, you know, the aging, the client, I would say that a lot of time they will share that, you know, by taking the medication or continue to do rehab, doing all the exercise, would that help them to regain, you know, what they used to do in terms of their physical functioning, in terms of their mobility? Because deep inside, they also understand that it's part of the natural process, you know, that every one of us will be going through. And there is also the the challenges that I always receive from the family members. They'll share that their loved one, be it their moms or dad, being resistant in taking the medications or even seeing the doctors. And being a counselor, as part of this professional role where I work with elderly, receiving feedback from the family members that, their loved one being resistant, seeing the doctors or even doing exercise, they'll just stay at home, watch TV, or just lying on the bed. And this is the part that sometimes I will try to explore further, to the elderly, what is the thing that, is causing them to not motivated, And like what I share, sometimes it's very real to them that they might even challenge me and saying that even they would see the doctor regularly or they'll take the medication, would that help them to regain their health? And sometimes, as my role as a counselor is not so much of getting into that, that debate, I would say, or argument with them. But a lot of time is also to explore further with them. Interestingly, as what they share, taking the amount of medications, seeing the doctors, or even doing the exercise, it might not help them to regain what they used to do in the past, be it for their health or their physical functioning. But sometimes I will pose a question back to them. I'm just wondering, why would your children, still insisting you to see a doctor and taking medication? And that is a part of my professional role to redirect back to them, for them to reflect deeper. Yes, it's a situation where we can't avoid aging. Yes, it's a situation that, our physical and health functioning will be declining. But how can we continue to live, wish whatever time that we have, and I guess in this world, no one will be able to, to tell us when will be the exact time that we are leaving this world. And this is something that, we will need to value, especially within the family. We need to value whatever time that we have with our loved one, our aging parents. How can we be mindful, to continue to engage with them, because they might not feel comfortable, as they age, to open up and to talk to people. And because of, their circle of friends who are also aging, they might also pass on as time goes by. So this might be the situation that, the older adults are going through, and as time goes by, they might be tends to keep things to themselves, not as what they used to do, opening up even to family members. And this is something that I would say it will be very real, for the elderly. And it really bottoms down between the family, how family members can identify, and try to continue to connect with them, encourage them, and empower them, as they continue to age. Because our elderly parents have brought us up, have given up not just the time that they have, but whatever their resources, whether for us in terms of invest in our educations, to provide us when we are still unable to provide for ourselves, financially. And when it comes to the stage that our parents are aging, and this is something that I would strongly encourage that, whether, between the family, whether your aging parents are still around, I will strongly encourage, people that I spoke to interact with them, to talk to them, and you might not really understand what they are going through because they might not be open up telling you. And this is something that I would say is a thing that I usually share with the caregiver. If we look at our parents, parents, when they put on the hat as a parent, their role is to give to their children. And at this stage of their time, when they are unable to do so, the least thing that they want to do is to bring a burden for their children or for their family members. So it will be really tough, for the elderly, at this stage of time. And if family members who are not mindful on this part, it can be really tough also, because there might be a gap in between the communication part, because, caregiver might be overwhelmed with the multiple roles that they are in, because they might have their own family, they might have their own children, and they might be also working adults. And it's tough to relate or understand, because end of the day, we will never be in their shoe, to be on wheelchair, one day, or using a walking frame, or to rely on someone to feed us, to bathe us, and this is something that I would say we will never be in their shoe till the day come when we grow old. And this is something that I hope, as part of my sharing, you all can continue to connect and value whatever time that we have with our loved one. Yeah. With this, I will stop share my PowerPoint slide, and maybe I'll open up to the floor if there's any question that you all want to put it up and ask me. Okay, I saw there's a question that's asking, does the statistic apply to that? Okay, the statistic that earlier I shared is pertaining to the Asia, the Southeast Asia. Of course, the source, I would say that in other countries, they does show other issues that they are facing. And what I'm trying to highlight, even I guess in World Health Organization, aging populations is a global issue that we might need to relate in the country that we are in, and how can we continue to reach out to our loved one. Okay, I saw another question on, given the seriousness of this issue, are there any intervention efforts towards a younger generation currently? Okay, in our current context, if to really relate in terms of in Singapore context, I would say that there has been initiative, or even in the school context for younger generations, there have been emphasis on filial piety. The tradition value of, what our parents have done for us, and how can we give back to our parents as they continue to age in terms of the current situations. Okay, is there other ways to motivate the seniors? Okay, motivate seniors, I would say a lot of time, it really depends on the situations. Why I say that? Because there might be a certain hobby that the elders has been enjoy doing too with. But however, due to a decline in terms of the physical and their mobility, they might not be able to do so. And if we really look at their situation, it's not that they no longer like this hobby, but a lot of time is that they can't continue to do this hobby anymore because of the physical functioning is declining. And to motivate the seniors is really to help them, if there is really a transition, like what I mentioned, they have a fall, their physical or functioning has been declined, and to help them to overcome, family support is very important. Family support is very important encouragement to tell them that they are not alone by themselves in the current situations, and to further help them, because it's really fall back on how individual able to transit out from this. And when I say how individual, what I meant is towards back to the elderly, the seniors, on how they can overcome and come to their acceptance on this part. And one of the questions that I saw is the common ways to, to really deal about this loneliness and social isolation is really to, like what I said, start from the family, to connect them through the communication, to continue to engage them. And elderly, like what I share, they might not be open up. Elderly might not be open up to share all these things. And among the family members, there is something that I always share with a caregiver that, if let's say between the family members, especially, the seniors have many children, who are the children that usually able to connect well with the elders, and to really get the one of the sibling to try to continue to engage and encourage the elders, in terms of situation, and to highlight to them that, they are not alone at this present moment. And it's also the responsibility of the family members to see how they can continue to provide that kind of support for them. Okay, one of the questions is asking for recommended suggestion as how we can convince elderly parents to seek for counseling and therapy. Okay, the part that I would like to share with everyone that there will be definitely a taboo on seeking for counseling support, because especially how one might feel that, to speak to a counselor, I might having some mental issue. And this is really something where we will need to, manage it carefully. And in my current organization, when I speak to the elders or even my fellow colleagues who are trying to refer cases to me, they will try to highlight to them that, is it okay for my counselor to just have a conversation or have a chit chat with you? So it's an informal type of conversation. So it's not really the kind of counseling sessions where, that there will be assessment and then followed by interventions. So it will be being presented to the elderly that, have an informal conversation with the counselor, and then for the counselor to understand, and then for the counselor to further identify what is really the presenting issue, the underlying issue, or any blind spot, and then to further help the elders to overcome it. And a lot of time, for elderly clients, I would say that it's not easy. It's not easy to empower, to work on some of their challenges. That's why I shared early on that it's something that we can't really tell them to keep on stay positive, because it's really the situation that they are in, that they're unable to walk and they are using a walking frame or they are on wheelchair. So we might try to remind them to stay positive, or as my role as a counselor, sometimes I might redirect back to them that, if you continue to feel this way, I'm just wondering, how would your family member feel about it? So a lot of time, it's not just focusing on the client itself. So the working with the clients, a lot of time, I would say that we need to redirect the clients to also to take a step back, to reflect not just on his or her conditions, but to really look at, the family members that are still being there for them. And to really, to encourage them to speak to a counselor or psychotherapy, it's not easy. It's not easy because even for adults to see a counselor, I believe there is also people are being resistant to speak to counselor. So there is a part that, is how we encourage or how can we share with them, it's really till the time that seeing a counselor or psychotherapy is like seeing a doctor. Yes, I have some problem, but I'm seeing a counselor or psychotherapy to work on it because it's something that has been bothering me and I want to overcome it so I can able to function better, whether in my role at home or even, in my workplace. So this is really something that we need to continue to advocate. We need to educate people about mental illnesses. How can we be more open? Are there retirement village? Okay, this is a very good questions. And I believe in Singapore, in our Singapore context, we have tried to explore many alternatives. But on the part of retirement village, I think I read an article before, and this is something where it has been, our government have tendered it out for fund for anyone who are interested to bid for this tender, I think to sell a retirement village style concept. But however, as many of you are aware, Singapore has limited of resources, in terms of the land that we have. So it might be one of the alternative, having a retirement village, but I guess there will be a need to look at the existing resources that we have and to maximize, what are the things that we can reach out to our aging population. And a lot of time, as what earlier I shared, that, education is very important, especially for in the school, for the student. And sometimes if we look at our current education system, yes, there are emphasis on filial piety, on moral value. But as time goes by, because of the evolve of, the society, there seems to be a reduce of all this emphasis. Okay, let me see any other question. How can we help those elders who don't have family support? Yes, this is a very good question. And especially in Singapore context, I would say that, this is something that, we will need to tap on in terms of the community resources. And I believe in our current setting, we have tried to advocate, the kampong spirit, that what we used to do, in an island. Singapore used to be a small island, everyone lived in villages, and in villages, we are closely connected. There's a strong bonding. And what this question on, elderly don't have family support, it really bottoms down to how can we advocate, especially in our current modern society, that everyone are living in the concrete building. In Singapore, we have this housing estate, and elderly as what, being shared might not have family support or living alone by themselves. And it's really, we need to continue to look at how can we strengthen, this, like what I mentioned on this term, the kampong spirit, to get people involved, in terms of the block itself, and to come in to help one another, knowing the fact that, to reach out to these elders. Okay, this question was asking, I have worked as a volunteer at senior activity centers, found elders are a bit resistant to attend activity. Okay, to engage elders to be more involved in the activity, sometimes I would say that, we first and foremost, we need to be genuine. We need to be genuine to the elders whom we are working with. Because I would say that, seniors, they are very sensitive. They are very sensitive, and also they will able to feel when we talk to them, whether we are genuine concerned about them, or in a way, I would say that we are just performing our role. So as what one of the questions was trying to ask me as a volunteers, how can we encourage the elders? I would say that build the connection with the elders first. Establish a relationship with the elders first. Because if there is no relationship with the seniors whom you are doing the volunteers at these centers, it will be even tougher, to motivate them to participate in this activity. Can we still keep them engaged in the easiest way? This is something that I would say it will be very tough. This question, can we really keep them engaged in the easier ways? It's the same thing that, nowadays, for the student or adult learner, how can we engage them? Especially all of us are being caught in this COVID pandemic situation. There's a new norm, whether is it our working environment, the way we having our meeting, training, like what we are doing right now, we are having this virtual platform. And to engage with, be it in terms of the different age group out there, it really bottoms down how one is ready to open up, and before one is willing to open up, it still comes back to that part that whether we have established the relationship with the person. It might not be working just with the elderly, even with our working colleagues, all the people around us, sometimes it's tough to, to talk about anything because it might be a new relationship or new friendship that has been established. So a lot of time I would say that, we need to understand that be it working with elderly, working with, the younger generation, we need to bear in mind that, we need to start off to establish a relationship. And the relationship means that this is something I always share, that we need to be genuine. Because if we are not genuine, whether is it helping one another, as time goes by, people will able to feel it and will able to see it. Okay, let me respond to these last questions. Are there any clear cut or are there any warning signs for public to note on at risk elderly who are suicidal? Okay, this I think is a very important question that I would like to address, because when it comes to the warning sign, especially for those at-risk elderly, I would encourage everyone down here, to be mindful, being observant. I mean, it might be someone that we are, not related to us. It can be our neighbors. But it's good to be observant, meaning to say that, when is the last time our neighbor, our aging neighbor step out of the house? When is the last time we see him or her, in the void deck or in the garden, And of course, those who are closer to us, our aging parent, that would be the part that I would say that, we will need to feel it I believe we can see ourselves, but sometimes because we are really overwhelmed in our respective role, we might tend to overlook. But will be signs that we're able to pick up the indicator we're able to pick up, meaning to say that, when it comes to family gathering, how is the response from our aging parent? Whether they are able to be, express their joy to everyone, or as time goes by, we notice that the way they interact with the family members, getting lesser and lesser. So this is something that I would say that there are really indicator we can pick up, by just that whether as we are with them, whether we are observant enough to pick up all this. And it's not just the communication part. And this is something I just want to add on the part where it's also fall back in terms of be their eating habit and also their sleeping pattern. Eating habit will say that in terms of their appetite, that will be a very strong indicator whether they are eating well, whether they are still enjoying their favorite food. Of course, the sleeping part, the sleeping pattern will be, are they able to sleep well during the night? Whether it's okay for them to wake up during the night to go to the toilet. But the thing is, what is the frequency of them keep on waking up in the night, and whether are they able to go back to sleep? And sometimes it's also an expectation from family members also that, elders are unable to sleep at night. Sometimes they tend to sleep in the day, but family members sometimes will feel that if they sleep too much in the day, then they are unable to sleep in the night. So this is something that I always encourage family members to really monitor. Don't really jump into conclusion, because the night before they might be really have a good rest, or they are unable to get back to their sleep. So before, telling them not to sleep in the day or taking the nap, so it might be good to just check in with them. How are they, the night before? If they are really unable to sleep, I guess it's fair enough for them to have that nap, And sometimes I also share with the family members that actually it's good that, the person is still able to sleep. Yes, the elderly or seniors might be sleeping more, but sometimes if we look at it, it's not that, sometimes it's really not that they just want to sleep. It's like when we lie on the bed, sometimes it's the part that we able to have that comfort. And if we really look at the characteristic of the elderly, their body, they might be experiencing pain. It's not that they don't want to walk also, but it's that as they walk, they have the pain. And they lost the confidence. Can you imagine we are able to walk for 40 or 50 years and suddenly lost the ability to walk? And the confidence level, it might be below sea level. And this is something that is not to jump into conclusion of what we see or what we pick up or what we hear from people. But sometimes is that, if you have friends, do hear more from them. Do hear more from them, or do encourage them. If you don't have any information on how is the family dynamic, do give encouragement for them to, to try to stay connected with their aging parents. So with this, I think I should end my sharing. I hope you all have picked up something from my sharing. Thank you for giving the time to stay alert for the past an hour or so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. I think it was a very thought-provoking session. I think very useful as well. And thanks so much for giving us actionable tips that we can follow to take care of our elderly. Thank you so much for your time and presentation and thanks for the audience for being so active and asking questions. We will now have a break. We'll reconnect at 3:30 p.m.